Okay,
Only
we
thing
are
I want
going live.
is an edge light. That's the only thing at some point. I want to get another one of these over here as an edge light. But other than that, I'm happy. It looks good. It feels good.
Yeah. We are, just so you know, we are live, and
We
let's
are
see how many
live.
people are. Dan's in the crowd, man. I haven't seen Dan in forever, man. Dan's also hasn't even been commenting, so it's good to see you, Dan. Missed you, brother. I've got to
Missed you.
turn my.
Yeah, I was wondering for Aiden was like Aiden was trumpeting before we started this, and he was like, "Oh man, Dan Asdas." He's like, "You remember Asdas?" I'm like, "Of course I remember Asdas. How could I forget
Yeah,
Asdas?"
it's the
Dan
name, man.
Asdas.
It just rolls off the tongue.
I feel like I'm not saying that right, but whatever.
Asdas. I don't know.
Dan
It's
Asdas.
close. All right, I had to turn my AC on. It's freaking hot in here.
Yeah, I got fans. I got fans going on all over the place.
Oh, OG Kwasi. Well, it was nice earlier, and then we had a little bit of a storm. And
Yeah,
then,
it's been a weird day.
yeah, it has been a little bit of a weird day. How's everybody doing? OG Kwasi, how you doing? Dan, Rick on Mike, happy Friday, brother. Let's do
Happy
all this here.
Friday.
Hope you had a good show. I will not be able to make it today. Oh, like UK. Oh, cheers, brother. Hopefully we see you next week. Rick on Mike, and of course, Dan Asdas. You're totally saying it right, Dylan. There you go.
Sweet. Fantastic. For once I do something right. Oh.
Artemio Silva, about to leave the office. Don't leave us. No. How's your week, Dylan?
It's been a busy week. There's lots going on. I'm I'm effectively, I don't know, it's not an official announcement or anything. This has been the case for a while, but I am all of product management for Mackie at the moment. Like
I am product management.
Yeah, I literally literally, and I don't know how much longer I can. There's a lot, right? And you're pulled in so many directions, and everybody's really sympathetic to that so far. Like there's times where we're on meetings and they're like, Dylan, do you remember where we landed on this? Do you remember? I'm like, it's like 8:30 at night, and I'm like, no, I didn't even know what we're talking about. Like, no, I don't remember where we landed. And they're like, oh, it's fine. It's not like you're not across like 700 things right now. I'm like, yeah, literally. And so, yeah, man, I've just been doing a lot of stuff this week. There's been a lot of DSP work this week, man. I just got numbers floating around my head galore. Done a bunch of Rodecaster Studio stuff today. Had a great meeting with the folks over there, and did a deep dive on a bunch of cool stuff that you and I talked a little bit about, Aiden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Just been trucking through, man. Just sciencing and engineering things and trying to make things make sense. A lot of weird side quests. I had sort of one thing that I know something that you're really excited to bring into the channel, Aiden. It's like a full circle moment for you.
Yeah.
But whether that which is coming up soon. But I was trying to work on that most of this week, and then I just kept getting pulled off on side quests, on these like offshoot investigations to like be like, hey, what does that need to be? I'm like, fuck. I've never thought about.
Were you trying to work on the thing I've got that I sent to you? Because that one's broken.
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you were trying to work on the same thing. I misunderstood what you
No,
said.
not the same thing that you were working on. But this, when I say the same thing, I mean like one item that has just been like, I wanted to get this pounded out this week because our DSP engineer, like my resident mathematician, consortium partner, he's going off on vacation, and I got to get firmware done on some stuff. So I pushed like crazy to get it all done. I literally got it done a half an hour ago. And so my brain is still like decompressing sort of, but I've got beverages. It's good. We're in a good place. We're in a really good place.
We got OG Kwasi says we had the hottest day in Germany this year so far. That's intense. Steve is saying it was 42 degrees Celsius right now. That's hot. That's like underboob hot.
That is, yep. Sweat. No, I'm not outside in that.
I'm no 42 degrees. Yeah. So Dylan and I both spent a little bit of time in Vegas. I don't think that when you've been there, you've had any of the 35 plus temps in Vegas.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say no. I've had that in Australia for sure. I've had that several times in Australia.
But in Vegas,
where it's dry.
The first year I had it was 35 one day, and I'm walking around and Somebody's like, "Oh man, it's so hot out here," and I'm like, "Really? It's not that hot." Because it really doesn't strike you as being super hot, but then
No.
you come back to Ottawa where it's like literally breathing water because it's
Yeah.
so
Well, and this is
damp.
it. Like in my room here, I don't have an air conditioner in this studio. I've got 3 outside walls effectively, and I'm on a rooftop. So I've got the
Yeah.
roof. The sun is beating down on the roof all day, and so it gets warm in here. I got a dehumidifier. The window is open all day, so that is one thing.
Yeah.
Like unless I have to like voice something, the window's open all day. I got a fan in the window. I got a fan beside me that's just kind of blowing a little bit of air on me all the time, and then I got a dehumidifier. And that dehumidifier is going, I got it like routed into one of those big like water cooler jugs, and I dump
Yeah.
it once a day. Like
Holy shit,
there's so much water
Yeah.
in the air in this room. And so, yeah, but I find honestly with when the humidity is under control, like right now it's 45%, which is fine. That's good. That's what I want. And it's livable. I mean, again, I've got the fan actively blowing air on me. I'm wearing like a very 1-ply piece of fabric. But whereas, yeah, if I didn't have that dehumidifier, man, the muggy, I can't do muggy. I can't.
Well, that's the thing. Like we've got shitty air conditioning because we've got shitty pipes through the house. So even our heat doesn't go all the way up to the top floor because we only have 3-inch fucking heating pipes, which is trash. But I'm in the basement. And it's usually 5 degrees cooler down here. The problem is all the moisture basically settles down in here. So when I start sweating, upstairs is freaking hot. So just before we were about to do the stream, I told my kid to close the back door because I'm literally like drenched. So in the pews says, greetings from Houston. Got some Texas in the house. Steve, of course. Lightning Audio and Reviews. Hello, hello. How's it going? And OG Kwasi, it's 11 p.m. and still 30 degrees there. Good God.
Man, yeah, man. When I was in Australia, I forget. I think I was like stumbling back to my hotel at like in the middle of Sydney at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And like it was like 36 degrees at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's just wrong. That's nobody
like,
should have to put up with that.
It was brutal. Like you would still walk outside. It's pitch black outside. You walk outside, you just get hit with a wall of like, ouch. What the hell, man?
Artemio Silva says, I need a new dehumidifier. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, in Ottawa, I don't dehumidify much just because I don't like it dry, and we already have an air conditioner. So
it depends, man. Honestly, like I get a little hygrometer on the wall. And it's got a little temperature they're not expensive. I think it was like $12. And it's got a constant digital readout of what, and it's calibrated. You can do the little salt water thing, and calibrate it. But it's good to know because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I think we're good. Like even in the living room, like air conditioning's going. The temperature is good. The temperature is like 22 degrees, 21 degrees. Awesome. And then we look at the hygrometer and it's like 70% humidity. And I'm like, oh, wow. So cold and wet. Now it's cold and wet. Love that.
When you have an air conditioner, it's basically a dehumidifier anyways.
It is. It's like half of one, right? It's like an air conditioner puts one part, dehumidifier is all together, the evaporator and the condenser, whereas you separate them in an air conditioner.
Yeah, and it dries it out pretty well. Bulls
but it also depends if you have an air conditioner that's underpowered for the space that it's in, then it will also be underpowered in its ability to manage humidity.
Hey, Dylan, you want to shit your pants? What Bulls Promo TV said is going to make you go, wait, what did we say? Even more interesting, Dan, when they talk about things in the room they're not supposed to talk about. I don't know what that's referring to.
I don't know.
I don't think we let anything go. We would have seen it. We would have seen people like blowing up if we accidentally let anything out of the bag. Like people would blow up if they knew some of the things that. Yeah. So that's all.
Some of the things are just in my immediate physical proximity right now.
Would make people blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much. So yeah, I pissed off the world this week. People get mad, and I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with this because I even got a phone call
I
from
told
Dylan.
you. I
Oh
kind of
no.
gave him like a warning shot across the bow call. I said, "Hey, you know you're in the shit, right?"
Oh, I don't care. Well,
yeah, I know.
I said one thing, and there's a problem when you're making videos. And Dylan, you know this is when you go back and you edit and then kind of like you move stuff around. Sometimes you can say things out of context and you don't mean to. And there was one specific line that pissed a lot of people off. And this is the one thing that you were like, yeah, you can't say that, man. Like, holy shit. I said in the video, all preamps are meant to be transparent. And what that was is I was talking about originally, and I don't know why I deleted it. I was talking about under $1,000 interfaces. All preamps are intended to be as transparent as possible. And I know as you get over that, there's nuances in preamps and all that, and it's pissed a lot of people off, which is awesome. I love pissing people off. I love it. Because you know what? It gets people talking. It gets me a few death threats, which is fine. I can handle that stuff. Mostly it's
court jester.
Mostly it's the jerks, the people that take themselves so seriously. The bunch of jerks. Oh yeah, Jerker. He hasn't been around. Anyways, it's those people that I like to piss off because I like to keep on their toes. I don't like those people. I don't like people that like to lord knowledge over others. Anyways,
yeah,
I digress.
Or snake oil, or snake oil over others.
Yeah, and I don't. To me, it was accidentally said something that was relatively untrue. However, as much as all these people on me about how preamps, you can hear the difference in preamps. I understand. I've got a podcast editor that uses a Neve preamp that makes me want to shed my ears. It makes me want to rip my ears off the side of my head because of the sibilance that he gets from it. He's got to do like 3 passes of a de-esser because he runs a U87 AI into a Neve. I forget which one, not the Portico. What is the name of the
yeah also little love TA, man. TA's good people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But criticism, you don't use condenser mics for podcasting. Condenser mics are not the mic that you would choose for podcasting.
He can do whatever he wants. He makes the
money.
You
can do whatever you want, but the reason that you're having to do, like, again, the goal should be to process as little as possible, right? I think people get away from the in an ideal scenario, you shouldn't have to process a signal at all. And so the idea that, like, okay, you're actively putting in energy to do something a certain way. Like, again, you spend more money for, like, get a really good dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones are much better suited, generally speaking, to podcast work because condenser microphones for like an hour straight can be a little grating.
Yeah, they're a little over the top.
Because they have a very precise, detailed high end, generally speaking. But the downside of that is high frequencies of human voices kind of suck. In terms of the hearing spectrum, right?
They can, yeah.
No, they do, right? Because what is the high frequencies in human voice? It is sibilance.
Yeah,
it is sibilance. That is most of what is happening in terms of activity in that upper range. There's obviously upper harmonics and there's texture.
That's what I was going to say. Some of the character you really
there's
get
a lot
in the
of
voice.
that good stuff. And so for like a 3 or 5 minute song, to get Adele to get her pipes on a condenser mic, yeah, man, chef's kiss. But when you're somebody's sitting on headphones with nothing around it too, right? This is the other thing, is you're listening to only that mic most of the time, right? There's no bedding around the stuff, or the bedding is very minimal in most cases. It's really grating, having been somebody that's edited dry like recordings from condenser mics. It's a lot. And so, the reason that you're using a de-esser to manage that is because you're like 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. It's like, all right, you're using a really high-end detailed microphone, and then on top of that, oh my God, the S's are crazy. It's like, yes, because you chose a very high-end detailed microphone. Now you walk it back with a de-esser, right? You're doing all this high-frequency management. And I've had to do that as a mixing engineer. I've gotten recordings from people that choose the wrong mic for the wrong source. And then you look at the EQ and there's like this range that there's all this shit happening, these notches and these bumps and these dynamic nodes and all this shit. And then everything else is fine. And that's usually my first sign that somebody has used the wrong paintbrush, because if you're using the right paintbrush, it should be exactly the way that you want it to be. Record a 12 string with a ribbon mic.
Yeah.
You won't have to roll off any of the high end.
So I requested a favor from an old teacher of ours, Dan Mellon, and I requested to get a name of person that I would talk to get some gear out of the college. And he gave me the name, and then as I'm like, oh, thanks, man, that was easy. As I'm hanging up, he's like, by the way, I was wondering, looking for a voice for commercial here. We can't get it done in-house.
Oh yeah, I want to get a voice there.
If you can, it'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah.
Son of a. Okay, so I came down to my studio and I had a Lewitt set up just for voice calls. And I don't know why I put the Lewitt in there, but anyways, I just sat down, started recording. I listened back. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And it's so sibilant. It was like nails on a chalkboard. And I'm like, I look, it's the 240. I'm like, oh, holy crap, I'm selling that. So I put the 440 in. It's a lot better, but still, man, Lewitts are sibilant as all fuck. Anyways, though, some of the discourse here and the Lightning Audio and Reviews does bring up an interesting point. Jim left out the fact that some preamps add harmonics. He did not. He actually talked about harmonics a bit. I nicely mentioned that some people acted like savages. And one of the things that a lot of what Jim Lill did that I appreciate, I know there's a lot of like anti-Jim Lill sentiments right now. Jim Lill is an accomplished musician out of Nashville. He's a studio musician. He does his own recording. He's actually pretty damn good at what he does as well. But when he highlighted this, a lot of people missed the concept of what he was highlighting. Him being an accomplished musician and somebody that's worked in some of the best studios in the world and records in some of the best studios in the world, produces in some of the best studios in the world, he pointed out that he can't hear some of the differences between a lot of these preamps. And when a lot of people step back and go, yeah, well, the differences are there. What Jim Lill was kind of highlighting in that is, if only 1% of the population can hear differences, let's say, and I brought up the White Album in my video. If the White Album was recorded anywhere else than Abbey Road, would it still be the White Album? Yes, it would. It'd still be a classic. There's not a single part of that album that you would be like, oh, gross. Because it's not the music, it's not the preamps, it's not anything. There's obviously some of the compression, some of the shit like that. But for the most part, producers produce music. It sounds fantastic. It's on a great album. Where it was recorded doesn't matter. And when it's somebody that tells you that they can't hear the differences, that's because there's a large part of the people that can't hear differences between preamps. Now, when you start to look at full songs, nobody can listen to a song and go, there's that preamp. And maybe there's, a very small percentage of people in the world that can. The problem is, and this isn't anti-preamp. This isn't anti-don't buy Neve, don't buy these preamps. Because I'm about to buy the fucking ISA C8X from Focusrite for ridiculous amounts of money because I want it. And I don't think it's stupid to be able to afford stuff. But when you start getting the sentiment from a lot of the comments that are on these videos, and a lot of the vitriol coming from people is somebody just put they're acting like savages. That's why this information is out there, because there are people out there that like the fact that they're part of that 1%. And if you don't, you're a pleb. Yo, you can't hear a difference? Oh man, why do my guitars jump out of the mix on this one? And why does this happen? It's like, because a lot of people don't want to talk about the conditioning their ears have had over years. So, and I am going to give the floor to Dylan, because I know Dylan's got the slight smirk and I know a lot of what Dylan's going to say, because there are things and differences between preamps that definitely are there. But again, I still maintain that if only 1% of the population can hear them, are they really there? So Dylan, The other end of the spectrum, the intellect to my prowess. What do you got? As I stir the nest again, I haven't looked to see if anyone's angry at the bottom here.
So there are differences. I mean, I did a little test this week, just after watching your little video, just for shits, and I've got two fairly different preamps in terms of their design, their staging. An Audient ASP 800 or a preamp, and then a Neve 1073, as it turns out, a AMS Neve 1073 DPA. And so I ran a 1K test signal and then a white noise test signal through. And anybody that knows anything about preamp design that's watching this right now is going, "You fucking moron." But no, so I did these things, and there were differences, right? I sent you, Aiden, literally a picture of the graphs with my phone. There were distinct differences. They weren't as big as you would expect, right? Given the topology of the differences in how those two microphones those preamps are designed in terms of the amplification stages, and then how all of that is wired together. There's a lot of things. The ways that preamps are different is, and it's really hard. It's not something you can measure with our static suite of bullshit tests like a noise test or a sweep test or a single tone test, because there are things like something that's called what you would qualify as the transconductance curvature of a transistor or of a tube.
I can't wait to see the numbers go down right now, by the way.
we're getting in the weeds, but basically the gist is all of these components, right? Amplifiers, and the one issue, and I brought this up to Aiden, the one issue that I really took with is a video where he talks about, he's like, oh, well, they're designed to amplify without imparting anything on the signal. That doesn't exist.
No, I was referring to the under $1,000. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
But even then, anything that amplifies colors the signal. There is no such thing as a electrical amplifier that perfectly exactly recreates. Even the best designs have a certain coloration, and that coloration often comes in the form of dynamic response. So when a lot of people, when they talk about preamps, they'll talk about how preamps shape the sound, right? And so what does it mean to shape the sound? When we think of shaping the sound, we think of like frequency response, right? Like, oh, it adds a certain, no, that's a linear modification. The things that preamps do to the signal are nonlinear, right? They're not equalizers. They're preamps, they're amplifiers. And so what they're going to do is they're going to shape that blob of sound a certain way and react to different transients a different way. And so a lot of what you're going to get to, another thing is I did some like IMD, some intermodulation distortion tests. So if you run two different tones through an amplifier, you get very different results. And so the key here, though, and Aiden, you and I talked about this, is amplifiers, when they are in their kind of nominal operating range, they will behave pretty linearly, in the same way that, right, we talk about how ridiculous it is to test condenser microphones by talking straight into them on axis in a completely dead space, because a lot of most of these microphones on axis sound very similar. It's a lot of how they respond to off axis things, which for something like a vocal isn't as complicated. There is an element of it, right? Because there's sounds of our voice that come at the microphone from different angles. But for the most part, you got to test it at different angles. You got to check the phase relationships, right? When you have like omnidirectional capture coming into the mic, how does all that interact, and how does that get converted to an electrical signal? Anyway, preamps. Preamps. So yeah, in preamps is the same. It's kind of the same shtick. In their primary operating range, but then there is what we would qualify as kind of the nonlinear operational range before clipping, right? So there is a range. Some live sound engineers call it overgain, right? Overgain, soft clipping, gain compression. That's another one that I've heard reference to a few times. Gain compression. These are all kind of describing the same thing in a gist, which is that when you get past a certain point in a preamp, you're not clipping, but you're in nonlinear territory. The preamp is a little bit out of control. And so when you're recording drums, for example, the preamp becomes a little more significant because you will record like a snare drum, for example. I want the snap of a snare drum. And yes, the snare drum has snare wires on it that you are miking with a mic very close. So you get that. But I want to emphasize that a little bit. And so wouldn't it be nice if that little snare wire snap was a little bit distorted? And so you gain the microphone in a way where that peak goes into that nonlinear territory. And then the bulk of that sustain at the end, that decay falls in the linear range. So you've got a really clean kind of tail on the snare hit, but at the same time, the transient is a lot sharper because you've added some second or third harmonic
Saint
distortion.
Anger by Metallica. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And but what Aiden and I talk about is for this conversation, we're talking about podcasters. We're talking about voiceover people. We're talking about broadcasters. Broadcasters, there is an application there for that. But I think the other two ones, podcasters, voiceover, you're using these preamps in their linear range, or at least you should try to. You should try to shoot for healthy levels on these preamps. And you'll hear it. Like if you really listen, if you're using a microphone preamp and you are, I don't know, you're playing a keyboard through it or something, and you gain it up, and then you get that level into a range where the amplifier is, for some reason, and so another component of this is there are stages of the amplifier that might saturate before you actually hit that supply rail point. So preamps are often usually made up of many stages of amplification. And so, in modern preamps, like even in the 1073, if you look at the inside of a 1073, like a Neve 1073, it's all circuit board. You're like, it's a preamp. Like, what do you need all of this for? Like, we have preamps that are the size of poster stamps. But there's stuff is going into other stuff. So all this to say there are differences. How do those differences manifest? Those differences for me, I'm speaking anecdotally here. Those differences manifest in, and I didn't really think there was one because I did some A/B tests for a while, and I was like, okay, yeah, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of differences here, whatever. And then I used to do in broadcast, I used to do a lot of jingles, and for the longest time for those jingles, I used my Audient preamps, which are very straight edge preamps for the most part. They have a nice bright shimmer when you get them into kind of overgain territory. It's good. And then at one point I had switched over to the Neves as the primary chain, and without even really thinking about it. And then I was mixing a jingle one day and I was like, why in the fuck? And I have layered vocals, right? We're talking 24 voices on top of each other across the stereo spread, all recorded either with the Audient or with the Neve. And with the Audient, I found it was real easy to get it to sit nicely in the mix. I found for some reason the Neve was throwing in all kinds of what I would say is probably chalked up to IMD, like infrasonic harmonics that were just, even if I EQ'd it, it just wouldn't. It was too muddy. It was not shimmery enough, which makes sense because Neves aren't for that. That's not what Neves are for. Neves are for the upright bass on a Nora Jones track, man. That is what Neves are fucking amazing at, and I've used them for that. But if you want something that is brighter and that's a little bit more surgical, I mean, on the on the earlier end of that, you go for like an SSL or Audient again is a good example. Their big ASP consoles are they got good preamps, but and then on the upper edge of that, API, who are known for a lot of 80s vocals, which were very forward vocals. Were through API, but these all do have differences. The problem is they're really hard differences to measure with any kind of synthetic stimulus.
So the question I have here, not to interrupt, but I'll let you get back to it. The
No,
question
I was
have
done
here
with
is,
that. Yep.
okay. So the question I have then is, and this is something that a lot of people have to take a step back and consider. Now, I know you're practical. You're the type of person that can go, well, I mean, yeah, I guess, without getting offended. Now, I couldn't tell you the difference between an API and an Neve, flat out. If I listened to the two of them, I couldn't. I can hear the difference between a Neve and multiple other things because I've worked with one. And here's the caveat to a lot of this stuff. So you, Dylan, are a musical producer. You produce music. You're producing that music for whom? Who is?
Well, it depends. It depends.
Well, but let's say you're producing commercial music, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Who are you producing music for? It's the average Joe listening to music.
Well, it depends. You know, again, it depends on the client, and it depends what their specific audience is primed for, right? So a lot of times, if I'm mixing a project for an established person, it will be I will listen to their catalog because I want to make something that appeals to their specific group, even if it's a more popular mainstream kind of vibe. I want there's flavors of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Billie Eilish and Sabrina Carpenter are not the same thing.
No,
right? Same vein, not at all the same thing. Yeah.
No. But for the average listener, is the average listener going to hear differences? And I'm not talking about the differences. I'm not even talking about the hardware on the other end of the spectrum, because that's been beat to fucking death. But the average listener, would the average listener be able to hear if you mixed audio that had been recorded through an API versus audio that had been mixed through a Neve?
Yeah, because ultimately, in order to get both of those to sit right in the mix, right, there's a really interesting experiment that I want to get you to do. And it's going to be an interesting video where I want you to do a video where you mix a basic song with, like, you know, one mic on maybe 4 different things, right? A vocal, a guitar, and, you know, 2 other things. And I want you to set all of the gains to the same and just mix with the EQ. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to carve out little troughs in some instruments to make and then boost other instruments, and you're going to have to assign each instrument its own little frequency space in the mix, because ultimately when we're using an EQ, that's what we're doing. We're turning up that element or turning down that element at a certain frequency. And so effectively when you're EQing, you are mixing.
But when you talk about going beyond the preamp, though, you are talking about the EQ. You're talking about...
and you're talking about, again, like when you're critically listening to a mix, you're trying to get everything to sit in a nice place and still have the level of depth. But the key is not only have everything sit in a nice place, but to sit in a nice place and have the level of definition that you want it to have in context. Right. And so what that means is, sometimes you can give something a nice place, but it's either got too much detail and it's distracting me, or I want to draw more attention to it and I'm not getting enough detail. And so you try to balance those and then have all of these things with the right amount of detail and at the right level that you need them to be in relation to each other to create the energy curve that you want. Again, this is inside baseball hardcore,
but it also happens within the area of production. And this is the one thing that I will live and die by, is the music you're recording is more impacted by the production than it ever will be by the preamps. Now, there are outliers, as you said. You talk about
that. So when we talk about the sound of an album, like you talk about the White Album, right? These albums you can't really chalk up the sound of any of this to one specific thing. These albums, these products are an aggregate result of all of the factors, every little factor, every person that played on it, every room that they were in, every microphone that was chosen, every preamp, every mixing decision, all of that contributes to the final 1 or 2 track output that is that song. And so there's not a single, and this is the frustrating thing about making music, is you can't, or making anything, you can't chalk up, like, people like, how do you get the sound of Joe Rogan? Well, be Joe Rogan.
I have inside information on that, but I can't say anything.
Be Joe Rogan, right? They're not doing any magical voodoo that you think that they're doing. The reason is they happen to have a good product. They happen to have some clout in the market, and so people pay attention to their product. The marketing is done decently well, obviously, and so that is what makes that product. Like, you couldn't just man, if I only had those Onyx, that Mackie 8-channel Onyx mixer, fuck, if only I had that. I'd be a multi-millionaire pot. No, you wouldn't be, because your product would be, you need to refine the content, the form.
But
it's like a microphone. If you're a shitty singer, a U67 is not going to make you sound any better than an XM 1800.
Yeah. So I can hear, and I've got relatively well developed.
You
ears.
Can?
I can hear. I've got relatively well-developed ears. I'm not a producer by any stretch. I'm not audio engineer by any stretch. I've got pretty good ears. I can hear a lot. And this is the thing, when I listen to music, let's say we're taking it at the full scope of when you're hearing the aggregate of everything together. I can hear production. I can hear the producer in it. I can hear Rick Rubin, for fuck's sakes. I can't hear his preamps. And this is the one thing that I wanted a lot of people, and this, I'm not, again, once again, this isn't an argument against utilizing or having or aiming for owning anything like that. What it brings back is, from a lot of the people that are coming into this business, that, again, I go back to the Scarlet haters from 2012 who hated the 2i2. And I wasn't a big fan of the sound of the 2i2 either in the original first gen. But the vitriol that pours out from that, and I think that's the one thing that, while I put out content that has a little bit of an edge to it, part of that edge is for that reason. Because while there is plenty of stuff to be said about the producers making high-end content at, what was the Ocean
Way.
Ocean Way. And the kind of music that was made in that studio versus what people are making at home. And this is the big conversation that people kind of revert to is you've got these albums released in Ocean Way, and then you have albums that were recorded through specific preamps in a bedroom that also have sold millions of copies. And when people start getting into these cock measuring contests about what sounds best, is when we start to lose fact or lose the focus on what is actually important when you're doing this stuff. And there are a couple ways to look at this. There's a scientific way to look at it. And I heard from a lot of the mathematicians who really loved my joke about audio is math. They're like, fuck you. Math is argued all the time. And yeah, I get that.
It literally is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's so funny. People that aren't in the numbers business, as it were, in terms from a mathematics standpoint, math seems just like this constant, right? That's just like math is we measure everything else like up against math. It's like, no, man, we're still figuring shit out with math that we don't understand.
Math is universal. Like our whole world is based on math. And I think when I'm saying that, I like to go back to the 2 + 2 will never be 3. And when people start to lose sight of a lot of that stuff, when you start to lean a little too far on one side or the other, if you prefer the fat, punchy preamps from X and everything else is garbage, you've gone too far. And while I will always recognize that there are differences in that stuff, I need to support the ideology that it doesn't fucking matter too. And
I will say this. If you're, because here's the deal, right? We talked about earlier, the non-linear region of operation of a preamp. The thing is something like a human voice is extremely dynamic. And so unless you are like really surgical with where you put your gain, which you're not, like, come on.
No.
Unless you're really surgical with where you put your gain, you're going to have certain peaks in your audio that are going to venture into that non-linear region of operation. And so if you're recording a podcast and you find that there are like when somebody gets loud every once in a while when they're talking, they're not clipping, but their voice just seems to take over in a really unflattering way. That's the preamp.
You know what's funny about this? I got that email earlier today. Well, yesterday. And it was a guy that said, dude, I don't know what it is about my SM7B. Here, I got to come real close. He might actually be watching. And he's like, dude, I don't know what's happening with my SM7B, but sometimes when I get a little bit louder on the SM7B, there's some shit that happens that I don't like. It's not clipping, though. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That is non-linear operation before clipping.
They're the transients. And
OBC, baby.
And it's as soon as he leans in and I'm like, okay, well, if you don't like that, you need to back off from me. I'm like, no, it's not that. It's not me. No, it's not me. I said, well, you got to learn.
And he doesn't want to because he wants the proximity effect. He wants that low end boost. But and so he's not going to back off from the mic. So bring your fucking gain down.
But I also told him that bring your gain down. Bring your gain down, and you should be recording with peaks at around
So
neg
one
18
of the
to neg 12.
One of the things that's kind of unique about the Neve design, and there's other, I shouldn't say unique, it's not unique to that design, but it's more unique than like your garden variety like Scarlett preamp, which are fantastic preamps, or even, the Rode, well, the Rode preamps are a little bit different. But the the Neve, the way they work is they're stepped. For anybody that's ever used a Neve, they have that red knob on them, and it clicks into different positions that correlate to different gain amounts. And the idea there is each of those are manually sort of configured paths with the right amount, like the correct components to achieve a certain gain value. And they're optimized for that amount of gain increase, right? And then on top of that, you have a trim knob, a sort of secondary gain knob that you use to fine tune the gain within that, however many steps.
Yep.
But it's like, it's a weird way to do it, but the thing is each of those paths has a slightly different overgain sound and a slightly different overgain threshold, depending on the source coming in. So you can get some interesting variations, whereas with a more discrete preamp design, to say that it's a preamp, well, I shouldn't say definitively that, but preamp with less stages of gain, or even a single stage of gain, right? You've got one tube or whatever, one transistor in line between your mic and your line level. You have one kind of overgain state. It's a single way. And so I'll just say over the years, people have found ways with the Neve in combination with pads and stuff to get different conditions by setting like the preamp gain position really low, and then using an inline booster, or setting the inline, the gain position real high and using an attenuator in line to like a pad to bring the level down, and you get different results on those stepped preamps. And there's digital versions of that. There's a lot of digital preamps that have sort of digitally controlled gain steps. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways that that preamps can color and shape the sound, but they're not as big as you think they're going to be. Nothing there is going to make or break your thing. If you're skilled enough as a mixer, as an editor, you can make any preamp really work in any application. It's just that certain preamps are a little bit better when you push them up into that nonlinear territory.
Now, the content
I should say more. They're always nonlinear. I should say more nonlinear territory.
The content that I put out. One of the things that I was trying to hammer home that I did miss out on, that did get kind of removed from I don't even know what happened.
Lost in the weeds
process, was we're talking about the preamps, because Jim Lill used a Scarlett 2i2 in his, and he compared them to a Neve, and he played the music back and forth, and people listened to it, and blah blah blah. I'm not going to get into the weeds with that. But my point was, if I were to line up, probably, I could probably include Neves on this. If I were to line up all the preamps of everything I own under $1,000, and I played and I split the same signal to all of them and recorded them all, do you think there's people that will be able to identify brand from it? I don't think so.
It's an interesting test. Like what's the shittiest preamp you have access to?
First gen Scarlett's pretty bad. 45 dB of gain. The signal noise ratio is pretty trash.
All right. So if you, it's hard because I don't.
I've got one of the very first USB interfaces too. Tascam US 122. This is from like 2009.
So the hard thing about this is when you're measuring the preamp of an interface, you're measuring it in the context of the rest of the interface.
Yes.
Yeah. And so shitty converters are also going to color your sound. Any kind of shitty DSP. Now, again, I'm not saying Tascam did any of that, but back then we didn't know as much as we know now. And I'm sure Tascam looks at things that they did and they're like, why the fuck did we do that?
I would say most interfaces under $1,000. With the exception, there's some older stuff from about 10 years ago. I'm looking at my Arturia AudioFuse Studio that was built to a little bit of higher standard on stuff. Even that's pretty transparent for preamps. I would say most things under $1,000, you wouldn't be able to tell it's a Lewitt. You'd be able to tell if you didn't like it. But I don't think in a lot. The concern I have. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Finish.
So the concern I have, and this is where it originally came from, is because people will. I'll be reviewing this Lewitt Connect 6, and people are like, "What does it sound like compared to the Scarlett?" And the one thing that I tell people is, you're not going to hear a difference when I'm talking into the thing. How do the DI? You can listen to the difference in the DI inputs. You can listen to a lot of different things about this, but nobody's going to go, there it is. The Lewitt's better than the Scarlett. I will put money on that. And I can actually do just as much as I did with the NT1 versus the U87 AI, a little less extreme. I can literally run all this audio and do an A/B test throughout it all, and I bet you people wouldn't even be able to tell when I switched interfaces. I will put money on that. I'm not going to throw that by you because you do have very good ears. You could probably hear some of that stuff.
But again, it's hard. It's hard because you're going to notice it. And like, how do you consciously listen to the loudest peaks of pieces of audio? You think you can, but your ears don't perceive peaks linearly. And so without looking at the waveform and like isolating the loudest bits and listening to those, it's really hard to just tell nakedly. You really, again, you notice it in context a lot. So the aggregate effect of having 12 different things recorded, like if you have an entire mixer worth of things recorded with a certain preamp versus an entire mixer worth of things recorded with another preamp, you will hear a compounding difference in terms of how all of those elements I should say in there, you're not just getting the mixer, you're getting the summing functionality as well. That's coupled in that mixers will sum signals together differently.
Yeah.
But the preamps themselves will impart a very big color differential in there in terms of how all of those elements sit within each other.
Okay. So then you're saying that if I were to take 12 sources through a Lewitt Connect 6, I would have to individually record them all and layer them. And then I did the same thing with Scarlett 2i2. You think that the average person could hear the difference between the two of them?
What you'd have to do is you'd have to set up one computer because doing what you're talking about is a bullshit test because you'd have to do everything twice. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So what you'd have to do is you'd have to set up a microphone and you'd have to mult that microphone to two different interfaces, one going to your Mac, one going to your PC, two different sessions set up, recording the exact same input source in all of those situations. Yeah. So you have to do that and then dupe your processing. So exactly the same processing on both, like duplicate every single plugin, make sure it's exactly the same, like all of that. And then you will hear a difference.
Yeah. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I think I'm probably going to do that. And it's not even trying to own this because that's not the spirit of this channel. Never will be. I think the point is I think there's a lot of professionals that work in audio that forget what it's like for a lot of people that just listen. And I think there's a lot lost on a lot of professionals that don't realize how much an untrained brain can't hear. And I will tell you, and the way I can tell you this, and this is something I did to my kid the other day, and they actually kind of hate me for it. I looked at Lily, I said, Lily, can you hear the fridge? Lily said, I can't hear the fridge. I said, really? Listen. And still couldn't hear the fridge. I said, Lily, we're going to walk up to the fridge and you're going to put your ear to the fridge and you're going to hear the fridge. And so Lily walked up to the fridge, put their ear to the fridge and heard the fridge. And then they walked back to the living room, sat down, went, son of a bitch, I can't stop hearing the fridge now. And this is an understanding of how the brain works when it comes to a lot of perception we have in the world around us, and how I think a lot of people forget how untrained ears are. And I think when people start the
human brain filters out a lot of stuff. And again, it's like it's like when most people listen to music, do they need the chromatic depth of a jazz song to get their rocks off? No.
No.
Jazz, for the most part, there's lots of people that aren't musicians that are into jazz. I'm not saying that there aren't, but there's most of the people in my life that I have met that have been really into jazz are also musicians. Weird fun fact about jazz is that it generally is music for musicians. There are things that I have fussed around with for a day on a mix before, that there would be people that'd be like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that. Even honestly, dude, there's a song that I showed you when we were in Vegas. I like completely rebuilt the vocal and the guitar chain on the main guitar and the main vocal of that track, and then made a bunch of other tweaks. And I was like A-Bing, and I'm like, man, I think the average person would be able to tell a difference. The thing is, I don't think they would be able to tell you what is different. So this is the thing, right? Is whether something is okay. I can identify that something about it has changed. But that's different than, okay, I can identify something about it has changed. And with my untrained ears, I can also hear what has changed. And I can tell you exactly what it is that has changed. Most people can't ever do that second part. A lot of people will tell you it's different. And I remember I was the new Thumps. I had the new Mackie Thump speakers. I had one of them, the 12, in my office here. And I had it set up and I was voicing it. I was sitting there and I was adding EQ nodes to the DSP, and I was listening and I was running program material through it. And so I got to a point where I was really happy with it. I took her in and I had it set up. We have a little app that we use to edit the DSP in the pre-production versions of these products. And I had it set up where the space bar would turn on and off the DSP. And she was able to tell, like, all I asked her to do is I said, tell me which one you like more. And I started it out with it turned on. And then she was, threw a little red herring in there. And she sat there listening to music. We had a few different songs on. She sat there A-Bing for a few minutes at least. And then finally she was like, I don't know why. I have no idea why, but I like this one more. And the one that she liked more was with the DSP turned on. So I was like, good, thank you. That's all I needed. Yep. That's the only thing I needed is that you had a mild preference for our tuned version versus the supposedly flat version.
So we got to go in a minute, but I got a question for you. Do you remember DVD audio? You remember DVD audio, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how much you got into DVD audio, but I was over at my
I released a DVD audio album once, and that's about it.
I went over to my father-in-law's, and he had the remastered version of Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. And I know.
So are you talking about DVD audio or SACD?
No, it's DVD audio. It was the original.
I was going to say, you gave me the SACD version of exactly what you're talking about. So does he have both?
Yes.
Oh,
because he's got a DVD audio player. Because he went and he bought one. He was one of the 5 people in the world that bought one, for fuck's sakes. So DVD audio, and we sat down, and he has this whole. So he's got a Macintosh fucking amplifier down there. It's ridiculous, the setup, and he starts playing Rumors, and I know every note of this album. It's my favorite album of all time by a long shot. And I swear to God, I'm sitting there listening, and I didn't know it was DVD audio. I just thought we were listening to Rumors, and I'm like, Dan, this is different. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I can hear shit in the cymbals that isn't in the original. And I know it's not your fucking speakers, because that's cymbals, that's your tweeters, that's not shit that I should be hearing because you have nicer speakers than me. He goes, oh, no. He's like, this is DVD audio. I'm like, really? Wow. And we sat there, we listened to the whole album. Transcendent. That album is every time you listen to it. Wife came down. Oh, this is Rumors. Cool, I like this album. Listened for a little bit. Walked away. Didn't hear a bloody thing. And that's where I'm coming from with it. Now, you're right. There are people. DSP, I find, in effects are kind of that's the one thing people do notice, because there's EQ does change a lot.
Well, EQ is linear, right? It's a filter, and so filters are like when you start getting into non-linear, like even compression, right? Compression is kind of a fundamental component of audio processing, but yet most people, if you wanted them to identify the difference, between like a compressed signal has better sustain. And so I guess in terms of the subconscious thing, but how most people don't know how to describe that, because they don't think of audio in those terms, like attack and sustain. They don't think of those things. And so
No.
They'll just be like, oh yeah, they'll like one or they won't like the other one, and
Yeah.
and then that's basically all that you're gonna get from the average listener when it comes to compression. Because non-linear things, unless it's like a really aggressive, like second or third order, fourth order harmonic, like distortion, which ends up adding all this high frequency shrill stuff, and so people hear that and go, ew, that sound, I don't like that, or oh, that
Yeah.
sounds fat, it's a very thick sound. And so they might hear that, but in terms of what you need to do to get those results, it's often in no way related to things like preamps.
So before we go, it's 6:01. How many preamps do you have of the upper echelon in your studio right now?
3.
Okay. So I am going to propose a test we do. We're going to Jim Lil this. We're going to take multiple signals, and I will bring over a bunch of, I've got the Lewitt Connect 6, I've got the Scarlett 2i2, I've got the Mini Fuse Studio, I've got a bunch of these little shitty preamps, or what people would consider shitty preamps. And what we're going to do is, I think we should do this, and we should like split them out and test them against each other, and see what comes of it. I think this would be a fun little test.
You know what I think? Other thing you could do is do a little null test. Line up the waveforms after the fact, put them at Unity, and then
see what doesn't get canceled.
Yeah, well, see if there's literally anything. And it might be weird because, again, if it's only the peaks of things that get distorted and that have that characteristic saturation, what you're going to be left with at the end of the null test is going to be really weird, but it's not going to be dead center. There's going to be little weird artifacts going in multiple directions.
I like this. And this is something that not only people will watch, but this might be a little bit of fun that we can have. And we can actually, if we can disprove Jim Lil, if we can actually put rubber to the road.
I don't, there's nothing that I'm going to refute because I think the core consensus, right? And again, you can't really refute when somebody tells you that they feel a certain way. You can't really refute that. That's an intrinsic thing. And so Jim Lil is basically saying, I can't, and nobody that I know, and myself, I can't tell the difference listening to these
measured,
things.
Dude. It's not just listening.
And the measurements that I've done, which aren't correct measurements for that kind of application, but the measurements that I've done are very similar. And even I sent you the thing, but again, this is something we've already established. This is hard to measure. You can't really measure this, at least not using traditional stimulus.
I think this would be a fun test. And rigging it up so we can get 2 live signals coming out of a microphone, just a splitter should work.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I think so. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and just try to match the gain. So your recording levels, try to check in both cases and make sure that they are, because you want to see, and it's hard because each amplifier is going to have a different overgain stage, but pick a nominal spot, like try to get to 0 dBu or like whatever, neg 18 dBFS, and get both of those mics around the same spot. And
that should be pretty easy. Now, I do know that we didn't get to a lot of the questions today, and I apologize to everybody. We'll definitely get to these, or we'll get to your conversation notes next week. I do feel like this deserved the airing of grievances between Dylan and I. And I feel like both sides.
I don't have any grievances, man. Again, it's not a big deal. It's not a big thing. Like preamps are not going to make or break your record. They will make it easier to get to a happy place. And I will say that there are certain sounds that if you really, really try, because I have, with preamps, to be like, oh man, I really need this to fit in a certain way, and there's just a color that is missing, and that color that is missing is often the nonlinear things that are imparted into the signal by a particular design. But again, that's not to say that if you're using those things well within their operating limits, and not driving them crazy hard, you shouldn't have a ton of differences.
I'm curious. Not necessarily the API and the Neve and all that. We're just going to throw those in for some fun color. But I'm mostly interested in when we start comparing Scarlett to X or some of the smaller brands, because all these people that say you can definitely hear differences between them, I call bullshit on it, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to be proven wrong. and I am willing to put money where my mouth is. So let's try that next time. Anyways, thank you everybody for sticking around through this conversation through all the
Yeah, this has been in the weeds for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody that stuck around because I mean we had a decent showing. So we will see you guys next week, God willing. It is the summer. Dan, I will just say this. Sorry, that's Dan. I missed you too, buddy. Hopefully you come back, brother. And also always here for conversations on the videos. But I apologize we didn't get to any of the other conversations, and we'll get to those next week.
My
And
fault.
you guys have a great week. Cheers, guys.
Catch you next time.